This is not a series about games you haven't heard of. This is a series about games everyone has heard of. Games that everyone has an opinion on, regardless of whether they've played them or not. Games whose actual qualities have been buried in a narrative, whether good or bad. Games that everyone always makes the exact same comments about. Games that are in desperate need of a second opinion. Hello everybody, Dr. Coleman here with a PhD in being ready for a miracle. As you can see, I'm finally moved into the new office, but that's not what I came to talk to you about this week. You see, last week, Tim Caldwell, creator of point and clickbait and one of the best men working in this godforsaken industry, wrote an article for Polygon titled, "Valve is not your friend, and Steam is not healthy for gaming." As it so happened, this article came to my attention just as I was starting this week's second opinion, which was going to be about the flaws in Valve's own Team Fortress 2. Now, we're still going to do that, probably next week, but that article made me think, hey, I too hate Valve, and I've been writing about that fact for a couple years, and if this show can give a console a second opinion, well, why not a company? So if you'll pardon a slight deviation from our usual programming, it's time to give everyone's favorite evil corporate monopoly a desperately needed second opinion. My goal here is not to replace the Tim Caldwell article, or to simply restate the points that he did. Part of that's because it's an excellent article written by an excellent writer, and you should go read it. And the other part of that is because his article is more of a historical piece, a well-sourced look at Valve's terrible business practices over the years. And that's not really Second Opinion's bag. This series is about criticism, not hard-hitting journalism, and it always has been. It's not my place to weigh in on whether or not the good guy Valve image has always been a marketing ploy, as Caldwell posits. I'm not interested in reporting on the fact that they're dodging taxes and exploiting workers, even though it's a matter of public record that they are, and you should definitely be aware of that fact. But I'll sure as hell critique them and their current anti-consumer business practices. Just as I've explained why, in my opinion, we should see Grim Fandango as being no better than your average point and click, I'm going to explain why, in my opinion, we should see Valve as being on the same level as EA, Ubisoft, and every other money-grubbing games industry parasite. It's not hard to see why people love the Valve Corporation, which is a corporation, as much as people like to forget that fact. In their heyday, they were responsible for such games as the genre-defining, but not actually that good, Half-Life, the also genre-defining Left 4 Dead, the hilarious and until recently seemingly unkillable Team Fortress 2, and Portal 2, which is the closest humanity has ever come to a truly perfect video game. Oh, and they're also responsible for a little-known game called Dota 2, the single most played game on Steam and one of the biggest esports in the world. Once upon a time, they seemed like a company that truly cared about games and about creating great experiences for their customers. Then, they famously decided to quit making games, choosing instead to focus full-time on maintaining Team Fortress 2 and Dota 2, and most importantly, Steam, the largest PC games distributor in the world. Now that all of their writers and designers have either quit or are trapped in the purgatory of Team Fortress comics, Valve will probably never make a game again. Especially Half-Life 3. Can we all please shut up about that? No one who worked on the Half-Life games still works at Valve. It's not happening. And even if it did, there's no way it could hold up to a decade of hype. Still, that didn't bother me. You don't want to make games anymore? So be it. All the stuff I love will still be there, and there's nothing wrong with quitting while you're ahead. I'd rather have 2 excellent Portal games and see it turn into some increasingly horrible annual franchise like Assassin's Creed. What bothers me is that they didn't work on Steam, they didn't work on Dota, and they didn't work on Team Fortress 2. Steam is still a broken mess, completely free of any sort of quality control. Dota 2 recently had an update that completely changed everything and pissed off nearly the entire fan base, and when Team Fortress 2 really needed to make a big comeback, at the time when it was competing against the likes of Overwatch, Battleborn, and Paladins, when it needed to have the update to end all updates, they completely broke the game. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to talk about that next week. The thing about the Valve Corporation is that it's lazy and it's greedy. They're used to having such a stranglehold on things that they don't have to provide a quality product. For years, Team Fortress 2 was the best team-based multiplayer FPS on the market. and the only one with the cartoony, objective-focused approach Overwatch would later steal and marginally improve upon. Dota 2 players complain about every update, rightly, but that game's slightly more addictive than cocaine. And if you've already sunk thousands of hours into it, you're not going to throw that away just because they ignored all the actual balance issues in favor of repainting Skeleton King. And what are you going to do? Not use Steam? Because as a reviewer, I can tell you it's the only place we ever get PC review code from. A lot of people, Caldwell included, have disputed Valve's famous claims about their mobile offices and the fact that they let people work on whatever projects they want. But, to be honest, I feel like there's gotta be some truth to that, because otherwise I don't know how you explain the depths of Valve's laziness. Probably the most prominent example of this is Steam's infamous lack of quality control. In case you're somehow unaware, in the past several years, Steam has become an absolute dumping ground for crap games. I'm not even talking about stuff like that Slave Tetris game, which, while obviously of low quality and poor taste, was at least a finished functioning product. I'm talking about Journey of the Light, a game whose first level was unbeatable and whose other levels didn't exist. I'm talking about games that just don't work and the 6 different versions of the Unit Z asset pack that have made it to Greenlight or further. I'm talking about that early access TV show that was literally charging $7 for a text document describing what the show would eventually be. I'm mad, and you should be too, that such a large storefront can't handle one of the basic functions of a store, which is to provide working products that meet at least some standard of quality. I mean, sure, buyer beware, but what if I like trying smaller indie games? And for years, if you tried a game and it turned out to be garbage, you were fresh out of luck, even though UK law requires storefronts like Steam to offer refunds for any reason. Now they finally have introduced refunds, and there's a bunch of ridiculous restrictions on them. Some games have even figured out how to be unrefundable, like this week's Mirage Arcane Warfare, which counts time spent playing the beta towards a 2-hour limit for the full game. What's baffling, though, is how easy a problem this is to fix. Despite Valve's litany of excuses, they could easily screen all the games that make it onto their store. In fact, they could even go through all the early access games and make sure they're actually making improvements and not just stagnating in the pre-alpha phase. How do I know? On average, 100 games go onto Steam Greenlight a day. How many people do you think it would take working 8 hours a day to go through those games? If they look at 10 games a day, a little more than 1 game an hour, and more time than anyone should need to look at something like Potato Thriller and realize it's crap, that's only 10 people. They could pay for 10 people just with the money they skimmed off the Dota International prize pool. But even if that math is wrong, it's unnecessary. I know that Valve could implement that kind of quality control because GOG implements that kind of quality control. You know, GOG? That tiny indie company with a team of 30 people, the company that isn't making billions of dollars a year? And Valve's responses to the problem have each been more nonsensical than the last. They announced that they were going to replace Steam Greenlight with Steam Direct, a replacement that was supposed to happen in March, by the way. With Steam Direct, you submit your game to an automated system that will let pretty much anything through, but only after you pay a fee that might be as high as $5,000. That price would limit one-man indie devs, like those responsible for games like Undertale or The Search, and even some small teams. But you know what it wouldn't limit? Companies like YOLO Army, who promise to get your games through Greenlight for a small fee and have been responsible for dozens of terrible, low-quality games. In response to the backlash this plan inevitably caused, they invited Jim Sterling and Total Biscuit to come talk to them about how to make Steam better. And the proposed initiatives that came out of that are even more bizarre. There isn't time in this video to go through them all in detail, which should say a lot all by itself, but basically their proposed plan would only allow you to see games the community has deemed good, that is, unless you decided to become a Steam Explorer, which would let you, in quotes, go through the crap and pick out the games that are actually good. In other words, Valve is hoping that you will do the quality control work for them, only without getting any sort of pay, naturally. It's the same unincentivized labor they expect from Steam curators, and from the artists and developers who put their heart and soul into the Steam Workshop, turning over the rights to their creations to Valve when they do so. All of Steam's responsibilities responses to the quality control issue have been utterly baffling, whether it's Steam Discoveries, Steam Explorer, Steam Tags, or any other combination of noun and Steam. But they're only baffling if you look at them like their purpose is to actually solve the problem. They make perfect sense if your only goal is to make as much money as possible at the expense of your customers. Valve doesn't want to solve the quality control problem. If they did, they have the resources to do so and would have fixed it long ago. They want these terrible games to make it onto the Steam storefront because they make money on every sale. They make money on every trading card too, which as it turns out is how most of these less than bargain bin games actually make their money back. And from that perspective, the new Steam Direct system makes perfect sense. The $100 fee currently required for Greenlight goes to Child's Play charity. The $500, $1,000, $5,000 fee for Steam Direct goes straight into Valve's pocket. They are literally taking money away from charity, folks. I don't know how I can make this any more clear. Lose the idea that Valve is somehow acting in the customer's best interest, and a lot of things start to make sense. One of my personal pet peeves with Steam is the many problems with the Steam controller. Now, I'm a big fan of the controller. It's actually my favorite controller for PC games by far. Sure, it takes some time to get used to, but being able to have mouse-accurate control with a gamepad is truly, and I don't use this word basically ever, revolutionary. That is, it would be if the haptic pads weren't glitching all the time, and if the controller didn't crash, and if the controller didn't require the use of Steam Big Picture, which crashes even more. They've slowly been trickling out updates, but why haven't they fixed these major issues, especially when they're still advertising the Steam controller all over the storefront? Simple. Each controller sale makes Steam a lot of money. Once you've bought it, they don't care if you're having a good time with it. They don't make money off of that. It's why they released 1 million Steam machines and haven't offered any support for any of them since. I could go on about Valve's many anti-consumer business practices. As I said, I think next week we'll dive into how and why they no longer care about maintaining their games. And then there's the fact that in 2015, they quietly announced that about 77,000 Steam accounts get hacked every month, despite their introduction of the awful Steam Guard service that makes me put in a code every time I try to use the mobile app, even on the same phone, even on the same network, even on the same day as I last used it. But the point is not to list every one of Valve's missteps. The point of this video is to bring to light the idea that a lot of people still can't accept. The idea that Valve has missteps. Look, you'll want to keep buying from Valve, buy from Valve. For better and for worse, Steam is going to remain a huge part of the PC gaming landscape for years to come. Mainly because, that's how monopolies work. I mean, as much as I've just ragged on the company, and as much as I try to stick to using GOG Galaxy for personal purchases, I still use Steam all the time for its work, for its exclusives, and for whenever I want to play games with friends. Plus, I love the Steam controller too much to give it up completely. My goal here is not to call for any kind of outright boycott, but simply to spread awareness. To try and break the idea that Steam is above reproach, or that Valve is this friendly mom-and-pop video game shop that actually cares about its customers. And please, commenters, have some self-respect. Don't do Valve's marketing for them just because you use Steam or because they made some games you like. We all shop at Walmart, but we don't make meme videos about why Doug McMillan is Jesus. So ask yourself, what makes Steam any different? Sure, I hate Steam, and I hate Valve for making Steam what it is today, but at the end of the day, it is the only place I can get Doom 2016 on PC. And what, like I'm gonna buy it on console? Gonna get an Xbox 360 copy just so they can discontinue it in a year and make me pay $1,000 for the Scorpio? Please. Even the worst PC storefront is better than the bullshit Microsoft, Sony, and especially Nintendo cook-up. Still, Steam is that worst PC storefront, and it's all thanks to Valve. And that is my professional opinion. Praise Gaben my ass. Thanks for watching this episode of Second Opinion. If you have a game, or apparently a company, or a console, or whatever, you think needs a second opinion, be sure to let me know in the comments, and there's a good chance your idea will be covered on the show. New episodes go up every Friday night. If you want to see more work from me and the rest of the talented Hey Poor Player team, be sure to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, or check out HeyPoorPlayer.com, where I do a lot of reviews. If you know someone you think would like the show, please tweet about it, or share it on Facebook, or just spread the word. Every extra view proves the show is viable, and ensures that I can make more episodes. Until then, stay professional, stay opinionated.